Today we are ranking the top 20 NBA players, in my opinion. Um, First of all, I want to lay out my criteria because it's so hard to quantify, where you rank guys. And I think you have to put out a specific line of why I'm putting certain players in certain areas. So there's a few areas of my personal criteria that gauges my rank on how great a player is. The first one is winning impact, is just basically how much does this player help my team win? This also includes does it translate to the playoffs, obviously, but does this make my team good? Are you getting just empty stats? Or are you actually contributing to a good team? Are you making your teammates better? Are you making the team win? This doesn't always mean, okay, only the people who win the most are the biggest winning impact, but you understand what I'm saying. The second is actual greatness and legacy. It's not just about like the rings or the MVPs or the accolades, but they do matter. And by greatness, I mean the context of, did you turn up in the big moments? How did you win your rings and all this kind of stuff? How great are you? Like, there are certain players and certain times and moments and games where you can say that is why they are great. Are you great? It's a bit of a broad description, but hey, I'm going by my own way here. Number three is context of your career. We've given the tools. A lot of great players, yeah, they might not have as many rings as they could. I'm not going to use that against them all the time. Some players simply didn't have the situation to match their actual talent, and you have to consider that in these rankings. It's not the be all end all, but career context is so important for me. Number four, era adjustment. There's a slight bias towards I'm not really as huge on the 60s and 70s. Kind of, I still value those errors, but there's a slight tax because certain players are benefited by how the league is set up and all this kind of stuff. There's a certain tax, not the be all end all, but there's a certain kind of thing as well with ABA. I value ABA a little less. Obviously, we can all assume who I'm talking about there, but I value ABA a little less, which might hurt your resume. It still matters, but just a little less. And then the fifth core is peak and longevity. How long did you last at your peak, and what was your peak? Personally, I think I value peak just a little more, but rather than peak, I like to say prime. How long were you at your best? If you had one season as the best season ever, that's cool. But if you could only do that and then the rest of your seasons are just great and not near that level, it's not as important. Longevity is great, but if you're like just good for 30 years, no one's ever done that, but if you're just good, it doesn't really matter. So that's my criteria. The way I'm ranking these guys, it's obviously top 20, but I've made a tier system. I believe there are 9 tiers. I will state every tier before we go into them. That's the basics of the ranking. So let's get started. Starting off, tier 9. These are the legends who are, just outside the door. Pretty much honorable mentions. I'm going to go through these pretty quick. I don't really want to talk about these guys too much. 24 is David Robinson, obviously an elite two-way player. I just think his championship resume doesn't match his talent. You know, it's pretty simple. Oscar Robertson, he lacked a situation, but he didn't really, he didn't do enough until he won the championship. He did it. The main argument is why he's above David Robinson for me, and the fact is that he didn't have the tools, but once he won with Kareem in '71. David had the tools, but he couldn't do it by himself. He lost to Akeem. He was the favorite in series, and he couldn't get it done until Duncan came in. So that's why I have Oscar above David. 22, Isaiah Thomas. I don't know if I specifically mentioned it in the criteria as a point, but I value being the guy. Robinson couldn't do it as the guy. Isaiah Thomas did it as the guy. Yes, he was favorite in some series, but of course, he did it as the guy. And even in the one he lost, he has the legendary sprain game in the fourth quarter. His peak isn't as good as the other two, I don't believe, but he's a champion and he did it as the guy. Yes, he had a great team around him, but he did it. He did his job. Number 21, Dr. J, Julius Irving. He was the bridge between eras. As I said, ABA, slide tax, but still an amazing player, obviously. But he wasn't as dominant, and I don't think his peak was up to other players as well. So that is tier 9, 24 to 21. Tier 8. I like to call this tier pick your spots. It includes one player, and that player is Kawhi Leonard. Listen, his main argument against him is the longevity and injuries. He didn't do it for enough elite seasons. Maybe that's what if, maybe not, but he didn't do it. I'm high on Kawhi though because he turned up when it mattered. He's one of the most clutch players of all time, two-time NBA champion, two-time Finals MVP. He wasn't the main guy in his first championship, but then he came back and he has on a legendary run in 2019, averaging 30 points per game through the first 3 rounds. Obviously, the iconic Game 7 buzzer beater, the greatest buzzer beater in history, maybe. I mean, in terms of how iconic it is and how great and how cool it is. Let's be honest here. 2019, amazing, and he locked up LeBron in his first championship. When it gets playoff time, Kawhi is great. This is the first time I'm using the great. He is greatness. He has greatness. His peak is top. Playoff translation elite. His resume is so good. The longevity is why he's not higher. He's a what if. I love Kawhi. Maybe it's a bias, but he's one of the greatest two-way players ever. He is made in a lab. The Claw, number 20. Moving on, tier 7. Legacy with context. These are players with incredible careers, but the ranking depends on how you weigh their circumstances, teammates, competition, and their championship context. Number 19, Dwayne Wade. He had a legendary playoff run and then sacrificed later. But then his sacrifice paid off and he won more. His first finals against Dallas, 34.7 points per game, legendary, led Miami back from a 2-0 deficit. He's an elite two-way player. He has the peak. He has decent longevity. He's won a lot, and he was the guy. He had a run where he was the guy, a legendary run where he was the guy. His career was limited by injuries, and his prime wasn't as long as other all-time greats, but he proved he could do it. He couldn't sustain it long enough, but he proved he could do it. Moving on, number 18, Dirk. That ring has blood. That ring is the reason he's top 20 and maybe not around 25. 2011 is the most special championship ever. He beat Kobe's Lakers, then he beat KD and Westbrook, then he beat LeBron's Heat. Dallas were never expected to do it, and he had such an amazing run that puts him into this category. But that's not disrespecting him as a player. While his one ring is heavier than everyone else, he still was such a fantastic player. His ring is really the reason why he's this high. And that's why I have at number 17, Giannis. Giannis has the same amount of rings as Dirk. And I promise you, this is not about ring culture. It's not about ring culture. You will see in the future, it's not about ring culture. Trust me. But at number 17, I have Giannis because I think his peak is definitely better than Dirk. One of the greatest two-way players ever. The rim pressure, he's an elite scorer, defender, rebounder. He only has one ring, same as Dirk, and his ring on paper, you're like, well, it's not as legendary, it's not as great, and he hasn't completed his entire career. However, I believe he peaked higher than Dirk. He's a two-way phenomenon. And 2021, while it is only, his ring is not as valuable as Dirk, he still had one of the greatest finals games ever. 3-1 comeback, 50-point closeout game. That is legendary. He led a historic great defense. Uh, he could be higher, and I believe he could push to around 14. maybe even higher. Now that he's in Miami as well, he has a new chance to win. Context again, he did not have the team apart from maybe 2 years. His health hurts him, his longevity hurts him. But when he had the team, he did it, and he did it in greatness. Number 16, KG. Now, this is the epitome of a situation that held him back. He has one ring, but he won that one ring when he had the one chance. He did what he was meant to do when he had the goal. Maybe the worst managed superstar in the history of the game. He's a two-way demon. He carried Minnesota for years. Had a poor roster. He was, you look at the offense and the playoffs, and you go, well, maybe he's not as good, but he has such a burden on him because those teams were so bad. And then obviously he gets traded to Boston and he instantly wins a championship. He transforms that defense and he proved he could do it if he had proper support. I mean, I'm pretty sure the on off numbers in Minnesota are just legendary. He's only this, yeah, he can only be this high though, because ultimately he had one championship. His offense, while I did say he was carrying a high burden, he was more limited to other all time forwards. But main argument is he wasn't the problem. The situation was, but at the same time, you can't just what if your way to the goat. Like, oh well, if he had a better team, he'd be the greatest of all time because he just didn't have the team. You can't just say that. But that context matters massively. But if we're going to talk about context, I think number 15 is real context. Jerry West. Okay, on paper you look at the finals record and you go, what an eight. You're saying this guy, but let's not get this wrong. This is one of the greatest performers ever. He's the only player to ever win a finals MVP on a losing team. He, like context, he constantly ran into players who were higher than him with better teams. Bill Russell's dynasty and Will Chamberlain. That is the context. 1A, it is still a weakness, but you need the full story. The losses don't tell the story. He was always losing to historically great teams, and he always held up his end of the bargain more often than not. It wasn't him being the loser. He didn't choke. He didn't not perform. He always turned up. He simply was just against dynasties and all-time greats that are ultimately better players than him as well. It really is context of his era. I mean, if he was in a different era, you look at his playoff resume and you go, wow, he could have done so much more. There's a reason he's called the logo. Come on. He's an elite scorer, elite passer, elite defender. He averaged 40 points per game in playoff. Pretty sure he averaged 46 in I forgot what series, but he averaged 46 in series and obviously he won the Finals MVP. But he also got over the hurdle as well. If he was 09, maybe you go, well, yeah, he didn't get it at all. Context matters, but he literally didn't win. He couldn't win ever, but he did. He had that one, and that one changes a lot. That tips the scale. But again, you can't just context your way to being the greatest. He lost 8 times in finals, whether he was favored or not, whether he turned up or not. He lost. That's what holds him. And at number 14, I hate to say it, but it's Kevin Durant. I really debated in this tier. This tier is the closest one ever because the way you view their situation really depends on how you rank them. Kevin Durant is a flimsy loser, ring chasing loser, but he did it. He did what he was meant to do. He didn't do it when he couldn't do it when he had Russ. He had to run off to the greatest team of all time, but he went off and he won. He did it. And also, player for player, he's the best in this tier, in my opinion. I think he peaked the highest. I really debated at first, when I was first making a mock for this list, it was actually Giannis versus him. But I think Kevin Durant just is simply a better player. I think him being 14 is not an overachievement, it's an underachievement. The talent he has, he should be a top 10 player of all time. He should have more rings. And despite his 2 rings maybe not even being as valuable as Dirk's one or Giannis's one, and he had to run off the all-time great teams. It doesn't change the fact he averaged 35 in the finals at elite efficiency. Whether you're on a heavily favored team or not, that is great. That is insane. It's undeniable. His ability is undeniable. The legacy debate is about circumstances, but his talent is undeniable. And as much as I don't want him to put above the rest, he's simply too good ability wise. This is where I have to really remove my quote greatness kind of flimsy idea and put it aside for just the ability itself. He's just such a force. Don't even get me started on his archetype. The ability is undeniable, as I've said multiple times. Yeah, that's tier 7. Tier 6. I like to call this one a complicated spot. Number 13, Wilt Chamberlain. He is the greatest statistical force ever, but he is the hardest player to evaluate historically. He might be the most unique player in NBA history in terms of context and just what they are. The dominance is undeniable. 100-point game, obviously, 50-point per game season, 27.2 rebounds per game at career average, 7 scoring titles, 4 MVPs, 11 rebounding titles. He was ahead of his era, but at the same time, he didn't always translate to the playoffs. I mean, otherwise, he'd be the greatest of all time. While he did constantly come up against Bill and the Celtics, uh, at the end of the day, he couldn't transform that dominance of the regular season into the playoffs. And there were times where he was favored and he lost, and that just can't be ignored. He dominated his era, and that is true, but he couldn't win as much as other people in his era, especially when you consider the 8 to 14 teams. And again, as I said at the beginning, I am slightly giving air attacks for players in these times. Um, Either 2 and 4 finals record, it's just such a complicated player to evaluate. He could have been the greatest of all time, but you can't always like. He's just such a complication. I think this is the perfect spot between these two tiers. And number 13, it's Wilt. Tier 5, Dynasty Architects. These players didn't just have great careers; they defined eras. They built cultures, and they ultimately, in a way, most of them changed basketball. And starting off on number 12, it's Hakeem Olajuwon. He might be the greatest two-way center peak outside of the very top. I mean, he's arguably the most complete center ever. He was just elite at everything. He had it all: scoring, post, footwork, rim protection, defense. He won 2 championships, and those 2 championships are they are so impressive. 1994, he won without another superstar teammate. He beat Ewing, and he carried Houston as a clear number 1. And then the year after, 1995, oh, Michael Jordan is back and all this. He didn't care. He swept Shaq. He dominated the playoffs, and he got the second ring as the main man. He didn't have a perfect team around him at all times, but he got 2 rings as the main guy, being an elite player in the playoffs. He's one of the greatest player performers ever. His peak was insane, and he proved he could do it as the main guy. He's only not higher because he didn't have as long a period of dominance as the players above him. And also, his regular season inconsistency isn't as great compared to others above him. But Hakeem in this tier, it's so close like the other ones. Hakeem, I love him. He's just such a great player. But at number 11, I have Larry Bird. I bumped him down a little at the end because while he's a complete offensive genius and also being a great defender, he could do everything. He's so all rounded. His peak is amazing. 3 MVPs, 3 championships, two Finals MVPs. He battled out with Bird. I mean, sorry, Bird. He battled out with Magic. but ultimately I'm not as high on his peak as other players. And at the same time, he didn't do it as long. He doesn't have as long longevity. One thing you could say is that he didn't play before the modern 3 point era, and maybe if they valued that more, he could have been greater. But he's just he's such a genius, such a smart player, such an all-rounded player. Building around him is so easy, but also at the same time, he had a good team and he won 3 championships. But when you're in this caliber of players, 3 championships, a lot of players scoff at that. And ultimately, above him at number 10, I have Kobe Bryant. The real point about Kobe Bryant that makes him at number 10 and above Larry for me is after Shaq. You can't disprove the 3 championships he won with Shaq, but ultimately he wasn't the number one. But what he did after that, that is what gives him the next level of greatness. I like to say Kobe Bryant is like a lot of, you hear jokes about people talking about Kobe fans, and they're like arguing why Kobe is second greatest ever, and he was Michael Jordan, but just a little worse. And I like to view it as Kobe Bryant is if Michael Jordan was a human and not a god. To 04 is a blemish, but how many legends do have blemishes? It's imperfect to be possible for most people. He has 5 championships, and he proved he could do it after Shaq. 09 and 10, you can argue how I would argue he wasn't the favorite in any of those years. Um, but he has so many legacy games. Obviously, in 2010, 7 game. 2010 is one of the most iconic championships ever. He has insane longevity, and at the same time, you also have to value the fact he played through a slower, more defensive era. But he was an elite playoff performer. And while he wasn't as efficient as other all-time players, he also had such a burden on him at so many times. And his peak is so high too. He just has the longevity, he has the peak, he has it all. And he proved he could do it without Shaq. Um, but at number 9, I've got Stephen Curry. He changed basketball, factually. He has one thing that I don't think Kobe, Larry, and Hakeem have, and that is a killer weapon, and that is his shooting. His gravity is stupid. He's arguably the greatest offensive player ever for some people, and I see that argument. 2022 is really the defining moment that bumps him up here because they weren't expected as heavily in that year. Obviously, he had such a great team around him, but he was the dynasty. Like the dynasty is only there because of him. Yes, it was the greatest team of all time, but he was the he was the engine. Like Kevin Durant won 2 Finals MVPs, but Curry was still their best player. Let's not get this wrong. Curry is Golden State. Curry was the engine. He won when he was meant to win, and then he also did in 22 where he wasn't. No one has ever forced a defense to change its entire structure like Stephen Curry. Maybe he's not as two-way as other players, but his gravity is insane. He won so much. He changed basketball. It's that simple. Number 8, I do have Magic above him though. He's one of the greatest offensive engines ever. He won 5 championships, 3 Finals MVPs, and he led the Lakers dynasty. Um, I really value how much you make others around you good, and Magic might be the greatest ever at that. He is, a lot of people like to say he's a negative defender. I personally disagree. I think that's massively overstated. He had Kareem, obviously he was older Kareem, but he battled in the 80s with Bird, and I think he won. I think he won over Bird, in my opinion. Well, he has a winning record, obviously, but I think Magic, he's He averaged what 12 assists in the finals, so like multiple times. He's such an he didn't just run an offense; he was the offense, you know. And obviously, I mean, Stephen Curry changed basketball. So did Magic. You know, the revival of the league. But that's the end of tier five. Um, Now we go in tier four. Tier four. This is called the historical exceptions tier. This is probably my most controversial. These are players who are almost impossible to compare normally because their greatness comes from different places. One represents the greatest winning resume ever, and the other represents one of the greatest peaks and consistency of a peak ever. At number seven, I have Bill Russell. There's an argument you can give him the GOAT case. There is 100% an argument, and if you said that, I won't say you're completely deluded. But me personally, as I've said before, I do have slight air tax. He won 11 championships, 11 and 1 in the finals, and he was, you know, the greatest defense player ever. But he was also limited as a scorer, and at the same time, there was only 14 teams in the league when he played. I also believe that he played in an era which massively benefited him. And you say, well, he played in the era, but if you put Wembanyama in that era, I think Wembanyama might be the greatest ever already. Um, you know, imagine if they added a 4 point line in the Curry era, he'd be the greatest ever. And you can say that's, oh, well, that's just a horrible argument to make. And I can see where it comes from, but at the same time, he was benefited by his era. Everyone wanted to score in the basket, and it was all funneled to him. Winning is the goal. No one has a better resume on that than Bill Russell. But era adjustment matters. The league had fewer teams, the talent pool was smaller, and his offensive role was limited. But ultimately, it did end up in winning. Him and Wilt are such hard players to gauge because, you know, the era and all, but I have him landing at number seven. Number six, 100% going to be my most controversial take. It's Nikola Jokic. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, yeah. He's the greatest offensive player of all time. He's the smartest player of all time, in my opinion. Sorry, I just dropped something. In my opinion, he's the greatest passer of all time. He's one of the greatest rebounders of all time. Unmatched processing speed, his consistency, he's always available. He should have won the last 5 MVPs in a row. He's been the best player for 5 years in a row at an insane level. Obviously, averaged a triple double the last 2 years. A lot of people like to state, oh, he's not a good defender. The way I look at Nikola Jokic is in terms of winning, he is one of the greatest players that benefits you winning, which obviously is part of my criteria. I view Jokic as he does all the little things you don't notice perfectly outside of rim protection. That's the one flaw on his resume. But Nikola Jokic, face value, okay? Offensively, there's no way to stop him. He's the greatest passer of all time. He's arguably the most efficient scorer of all time with elite volume. He's one of the greatest rebounders of all time. Um, he can score from the 3 point line. He can score from inside. He can score at the basket. He can score in the post. He can score from anywhere, all three levels at elite efficiency. And then, if you want to double him, he's the greatest processor of all time. He can make any pass every single time. He makes the right play every single time. And if he misses his own shot, he's going to get the rebound because he's such a great offensive rebounder as well. Uh, and then you look at the defensive side, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's not a good defender." He's got some of the busiest hands in the league. There's a reason why he averages so many steals. Defensive rebounding is massively understated. That ends like, would you rather get a defensive rebound or a block? Because a defensive rebound ends the other team's possession. He's a lot of people underrate his IQ on defense. He orchestrates the structure of the team on defense. A lot of times he calls out. He's so active. He's so vocal. Um, if I were to build a team today, Jokic might give me the highest chances to win just because he improves every part of the offense. He's involved in every single action. He makes every teammate player. His game does translate to playoff basketball. His offensive impact is unmatched. I just, he is so goddamn good. You know, he averages some players' best game. He averages that on elite efficiency every night. He's always available. He only has one ring. We'll get onto that later. But as I said before, context matters. The Denver Nuggets have never put a good enough team around Jokic for barely any seasons. 2 seasons, injuries. And even in those seasons, he carried the Denver Nuggets to beat a Clippers team, come back from a 3-1 deficit. It's multiple seasons where Jamal Murray is either injured, and the one time he's not injured is 2023, where they win. Michael Porter was injured before. Again, the bench depth is horrendous. The Denver Nuggets have absolutely screwed his career up. I'm rambling on here, but I just think, yeah, it. I feel like if he was more flashy, he'd be given more credit. He's arguably the most efficient player ever, the greatest offensive player ever, and a lot of people who like to say he's a defensive liability. There's a reason why every single season he is the highest plus minus. There's a reason because he's a winning player. He does everything you want to win, and he does it every night consistently. And then you want to get onto his ring. You want to talk about wait, that's the greatest offensive playoff run ever, ever, ever. 2023 is legendary. You want to say, oh, he didn't play a 50-win team. He played some goddamn good players. He dominated Bam. He dominated LeBron and AD. He dominated in that run. That run was not just a poxy run. You know, you look at it face value and you go, oh, no 50-win teams. Look at the players he went up against. Let's be so real here. It's the most dominant offensive player run ever. He dominated every round. He controlled every game like he's a point guard. Finals MVP, insane. 30-point triple double, elite efficiency. His offensive impact is unmatched. He makes every teammate better. He does winning basketball. And that is the point. And I think he could 100% go higher. It's that simple. Wow, this is getting long, I won't lie, but tier 3. This is the inner core. These are players who literally just have every argument. Like it's so hard to argue against any of their resumes. Let's start it off. At number 5 is Tim Duncan. Winning basketball. He wins. Okay, he was given the materials around him to win, but one, he won with those materials, and two, you like to say the dynasty was given to him, but he was a dynasty. He was only able to be built that consistently around him because he's such a goddamn amazing all-round player. He's such a high floor raiser, and let's not get it wrong at all. He's an elite player as well. His peak isn't as high as others, in my opinion, but he's an elite scorer, arguably the best defender in the league. He's an elite rebounder, elite passer, basketball IQ, and one of the most underrated traits. He's a leader, and that is why the foundation of the Spurs dynasty could be led for nearly 2 decades. There's a reason why he wins his first championship, and then he wins it so long afterwards. He's not dominant, but he's always lurking. He's always there. He sustained such a high level for so long and won so much. It's an inarguable resume. He was the constant. The system was built around him. He may not have the highest peak ever, but nobody combined winning, consistency, and leadership better. He is a winning player. Talk about stability. He's not the flashiest. He's not going to dunk on you and get the highlight play, but he is such a winner. He was given the materials to do it, unlike certain others, which is why, you know, he was given the materials to do it, but he used those materials and he built a goddamn engine. He built a winning machine. If he was given them and he didn't do anything with it, then what? Well, you blame him for it. But he did what he's meant to do. He won consistently. He was always there, always lurking. Not as high a peak, but he was always there. But number 4, Shaquille O'Neal. Duncan didn't have as high a peak as we're talking about, but if you want to talk about peaks, 2000 to 2002 Shaq, I don't think anyone has ever dominated like him. Maybe Michael Jordan. 3 championships, 3 finals MVP in a row. Unstoppable. Elite playoff performer. Impossible to match. He's the most dominant physical force basketball has ever seen. At his peak, there was no answer. He could single handedly change the outcome of a series. He was the clear best player on a 3P team. The main argument about him is at his best, Shaq was the closest thing there was to an automatic championship. If you start your career, your team off in the NBA picking one player, and you know you're going to get peak Shaq for 3 years, you're going to win at least one ring, no matter what. I don't think there was ever a situation where Shaquille O'Neal didn't win at least one ring. Obviously, he won more, but he's just so dominant. He doesn't have the longevity as others. Tim has a higher longevity, but again, I do value peak. He's just unstoppable. He could have been the greatest of all time if he just, as we hear, could have maybe put some more work in. Simple. But he's just, he's so goddamn good. I mean, there's just no way to stop him. Let's be real. Uh, it's that simple. But I mean, ahead of him, number 3, I think this is an inarguable resume, and that is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was the bridge between eras. Obviously, all round. You want to talk about unstoppable? Let's talk about his goddamn skyhook, the most unstoppable shot ever, most unstoppable move ever in NBA history. It's a signature weapon. He won in multiple teams. He dominated in Milwaukee, and then he goes to the Lakers. Yeah, he had Magic Johnson, he had Oscar Robertson, he had the Lakers dynasty, but he won, and he was an elite player throughout those times, and he was still an MVP player before the Lakers. He's the ultimate combination of peak dominance and longevity. His resume is elite. I mean, the amount of all NBAs. He has 6 MVPs, most of all time, 6 championships. He's one of the greatest scorers of all time. The longevity, as I said, it's so hard to argue. Like, he, like, there's no argument against him apart from maybe he had help later on, but he proved he could do it before, and it's not like he wasn't amazing later on as well. He's just the resume is just insane. How do you argue against it? And that's why I have him at number 3, and that's the end of tier 5. Tier 3, the inner core. That's the end of that. Top 2. Let's be real. Let's get into it. This is what you're already here for. These are the players who represent the highest standard of basketball greatness. How great are you? One of them has maybe the most complete career ever, and one of them has the perfect career. But they are separated into 2 tiers. Tier 2, almost perfection. Number 2 all time, it's LeBron James. Okay. LeBron is probably the most complete basketball player ever. Okay. I don't even think I need to get into all the tools he had available for him. Longevity, finals MVPs, champions, MVPs. He's the all-time leading scorer. He's still in the league. He was born before some players that are actually in the league. He's played with his son. His peak, he has it. He has the longevity. He was there for so long. But ultimately, I don't think he's greater than Michael Jordan. He does have a losing record. Yes, some of these came against all-time great teams, but at the same time, he still has a blemish like 2011. And of course, then you go, well, what about 2016? Maybe that makes up for it. And 2018 playoff run, getting to the finals in the first in the first place was still insane. But yeah, a lot of people underrate that Heat team. They don't understand how great that Heat team actually was. The big three in Miami, like a lot of people, a lot of people don't even think that's a super team. Oh boy, it was a super team. The big three in Miami should have won more. Only 2 rings is really, really, it's disappointing. And of course, do we even need to talk about 2011? As I said before, it's a blemish in his history. He might be the greatest basketball player ever on pure ability. Maybe. I can see the argument. But the thing separating from Jordan is Michael Jordan is perfection. He has the perfect legacy. The one argument is he didn't do it as long, but he did more in a smaller amount of size. He peaked higher, in my opinion. He's by far the greatest scorer of all time. By far. Whoever you want to put second, KD, whoever the hell, Michael Jordan is the greatest scorer of all time. There's no argument against it. His playoff translation is fucking stupid. It is stupid. And you want to talk about greatness? Michael Jordan is greatness. He never ran off to Miami. Yes, he was given the tools, but there were times where Michael Jordan was not favored. There were times where he was not favored. Let's get that real. And he turned up. He's the greatest playoff player ever. Unstoppable scoring. He's elite defender, athletic dominance, leadership. He was probably the most clutch player ever. Maybe he 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 was so good that players in his era are tanked in terms of their legacy because they couldn't win anything. That's how dominant he was. You want to talk about legacy moments? 1991 finals against Magic, 93 finals against Barkley, the flu game in 97, 98 game 6 shot, countless, endless, iconic player performances. He's not as all round as LeBron, but a lot of people underrate him as a passer too. Trust me, Michael Jordan could pass. He did have Phil Jackson, he had Scotty, he had great Bulls teams, but he was the alpha on those teams. When the championships were won, it was because of Michael Jordan. It was because of Black Jesus. I think he's the highest peak ever. He's got perfect finals record. There's no blemish on his resume. Yeah, maybe he lost in the Celtics, but that's not really as big a blemish as 2011. He never failed. It's the perfect resume. I mean, the only argument is he didn't do it as long as others. I mean, but the peak is so goddamn high. I don't think there's an argument. Trust me, Jordan is not the greatest because he won. He's the greatest because almost every category of greatness points in the same direction. Clutch, peak, and he's not the most longevity ever, but he's still goddamn so insane for amazing cultural impact, legendary moments, the perfect finals record, dominance over his era. He was the guy. It was Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was basketball. Like, listen, this isn't a list of who has the most rings or the best stats. It's a ranking of who I believe gives me the greatest chance to win, but also accounting for their actual greatness, their legacy, and the context of the career. And at the top, it's Michael Jordan. I don't think he'll be surpassed for a long time. Wembenyama, might overtake him. But even then, will he have the health? Will he reach the peaks? I don't know. I don't know. That- Getting such a perfect legacy, again, the only argument I've brought up is really the longevity. But he did more than anyone else in a shorter amount of time outside of the maybe Wilts, Hasselbanks, or whatever the hell. But obviously, you look at the era, 8 to 14 teams, lesser talent pool, all that kind of thing. No one else in basketball has a perfect legacy like Michael Jordan. Every goddamn moment he turned up. I I'm not even going to list the the playoff performances and stats and averages he puts up in the playoffs. Trust me, just search up like some 10 crazy Michael Jordan statistics or something. And you'll just be fucking baffled by the levels he reached and the consistency. Like the scoring levels in the playoffs to have that so consistently, it's stupid. It's so stupid. Um, I respect you if you put LeBron as the GOAT, but Michael Jordan has a perfect legacy. Michael Jordan never had to run off to a better team. Yes, the Cavs didn't give LeBron the tools, you can argue, but the, you didn't have to run. We still made it to the finals in '07. He could have won. And of course, 2011 is a blemish. Michael Jordan's face is goddamn smooth. He has no blemishes. There's no argument. I mean, this might be an obvious thing to say, but I think if he doesn't retire and still plays instead of baseball, he's probably inarguable. But I see the argument. But ultimately, for me, they're in different tiers. LeBron is number two in tier two, almost perfection, but Michael Jordan is in tier one, and that is the perfect legacy. He's the closest thing we've ever had to a perfect player with a perfect legacy. And this, I mean, I don't know what else to say. He's iconic. He's clutch. He turned up. He's the greatest of all time. Let me know what you think of my list. You probably have a few disagreements, but it's natural. Um, Thanks for listening. Hope to see you soon, guys. Thanks.